Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and something that unusual that's happened with a Florida TV reporter named Victoria Price. She had been spotted by a viewer actually that saw her, I guess, on the news in Florida and had noticed some kind of lump or protrusion by her neck. And it's because that viewer apparently had the same thing. And as it turned out, it was discovered that she had some kind of, I guess it's like a thyroid cancer, and it's a tumor. Uh, and what's happening now is she had made some statement on social media that she's going to have it removed. I believe the thyroid removed as well, and there's some lymph nodes there. And found her birthday based on a Twitter post she had for August 11th, and it stated she was showing the numbers 2 8 right next to each other. Two, I guess, two on the left, and the number 8 was on the right. So, and it was a post for 2019. So that tells me she was born in 1991, and she'll be 29 this year on August 11th. Um, she was showing the numbers in very flamboyant Leo fashion, but based on the solar, I did, of course, I do a solar sunrise chart and improvise once again. I didn't have the time of birth, but have her date of birth is August 11th, 1991. She's from San Diego originally. There was this one source online that stated that, so I'm using that as the birth place. And again, I had to improvise once again and do a solar/sunrise chart in which I put the sun at the same position as the ascendant. Now, I'm going to talk about some natal placements and some transits that might have been tied into this. The one thing that I noticed that really stood out is that at the time this happened, transit Sun in Leo was very close to her natal Chiron. And it falls in the 12th house in her solar sunrise chart. 12th house can be connected with filmography. The 12th house is the house of Pisces. And you're talking about this being in flamboyant Leo, and in a way that was going to get some attention and notoriety. The sun, I mean, another thing too, is that you're talking about something that was spotted. I mean, the sun in astrology can rule the left or the right eye depending on gender. So, like, really figuratively, you could say an eye, and really literally in a way, and too, I mean, an eye was on this situation, was on that you could say that protrusion, that tumor she had. Keep in mind, I mean, that the sun, and also the sun can be about the physical body in astrology. And you're talking about Chiron can be associated with wounds. It's not just figurative suffering, it can be about literal suffering. So it's not surprising near this time that she's going to have surgery. So, and I mean, and interest, oddly enough, her being a sun in Leo, and that the fact that this kind of, you could say, it's not really a wound that was spotted, but something that could be tied into some kind of, which could be connected with, at least at some point, some physical suffering was spotted. And this was done in a way where, I mean, being the sun in Leo, something where that came out that was going to give her it was going to come out in a very big way, which was going to, in a way where she got notoriety and exposure because of this on the news. I saw this on Yahoo News, and I'm sure this, I mean, I know this was on a number of other websites as well. Now, the thing about this is, too, is the fact that I noticed too that transit Neptune right now in her solar sunrise chart falls in the 8th house of surgery. And keep in mind that Neptune in Pisces can be associated with the lymph nodes. The Neptune can be connected with diseases, and Pisces can be, and Pisces is associated with the lymph nodes. And you're talking about the transit of Neptune making an inconjunct aspect to her natal Sun and Leo. When you're talking about inconjunct aspects in astrology, they can be about health-related situations. The inconjunct transit from Neptune is coming from her 8th house of surgery. And again, Neptune in Pisces can be associated with the lymph nodes. And you're talking, Neptune is also about dissolving, dissipation of energy. So it's another way to look at it. It is about removal. And Neptune is also, transit Neptune is retrograde at this time. So it's actually going, you're talking about, I think that could be another indicator of something that's being removed. It's going away. And another thing, I've noticed, looking at her chart, she has a number of transits that are hitting the 6th house in her chart, in the solar sunrise chart. Transit Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn are there, and later on this year she will be going through her Saturn return. She has natal Saturn in Aquarius in that 6th house. And Saturn, when we're going through a Saturn return, often significant events can happen. You're talking about Saturn can be about, in some cases, be about debilitations. And you're talking about being in Aquarius, something of an unusual and unanticipated, unexpected nature. And another thing that I'm noticing too is that in this chart, what's interesting is that transit Uranus in Taurus is not far from her MC in the solar sunrise chart. And when you have a transit, like this, this is very unusual, story that's happening. But you're talking about the 10th house is the house of notoriety and public it could be public recognition, exposure. Uranus and Taurus by itself can manifest in, where it could be more prevalence, I would say, in unusual Taurus-related matters, and that wouldn't exclude the neck. And she's getting notoriety and exposure from something of an unusual nature that was associated with the thyroid area by her neck. The thyroid can be associated with Taurus, and Uranus also can be associated with television. This happened in a very, you could almost say, in an unorthodox or unusual manner, that where she got this notoriety and recognition for something associated with her throat. The Uranus, of course, could be associated with what is unusual, and you could say it's making a rather long square, very loose square to her natal sun, and the sun, of course, could be associated with physical issues. She also has Jupiter, her natal Jupiter, conjunct the sun in her natal chart in that 1st house in the solar sunrise chart. So when Jupiter, even though, I've stated this in previous videos, that Jupiter can be very paradoxical, it could be very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. In some cases, it can expand when it's hitting the sun, issues with the physical body. Now, this is something different, of course, because you're talking about Leo energy. That would be more likely, could be issues maybe later on she might experience, like with the heart or the upper back. But when you're talking about Jupiter on hitting the sun, I don't think it would necessarily exclude those health-related issues to ones that are Leo-related, but there would be a greater propensity for ones that would be Leo-related as opposed to another sun. But on the positive side, that may give her very exorbitant vitality. The sun in Leo by itself can be, the energy could be nearly indefatigable and inexorable. When you have Jupiter conjunct it, that could actually enlarge and expand it. But the thing she would have to be concerned with would be overdoing it and over exertion. Now, another thing that I noticed too in her chart, you're talking about, I would say if this is indeed like thyroid cancer, that could be considered a disease. In her natal chart, she has Uranus conjunct her Neptune in her chart, and it's in Capricorn, the sign of career. So that tells me this, it's not surprising that you're talking about Neptune could be associated with diseases, Uranus and television, that this was going to be something that wound up being televised and came in a very spontaneous, unusual manner that she was informed about this. And also the North Node in Capricorn is part of that conjunction as well. And the North Node can be about one's future and one's destiny. So it's not surprising that something like this did transpire. Now, another thing that I'm seeing in the chart too that I'm taking, I'm looking at, she also, going back to the Saturn in the sixth house, that could be, Saturn in Aquarius in the sixth house can manifest in unusual debilitations. Health, of course, health related, obviously. It's also the ruler of her sixth house of health. Now, but there's really not much more I was going to say about this. Another thing I noticed too, though, maybe one last thing, is that in the solar sunrise chart, she has Mars in the second house. The second house, remember that all houses in astrology can correspond and correlate with a proponent of the physical body. The second house could be connected with the neck and the throat because it is the house of Taurus. She has Mars in Virgo in that second house in the solar sunrise chart. So it's not surprising based on this that she's going to have some kind of surgery connected with the throat area that's going to be involved a lot of dissection. This is something that has to be done with a lot of precision. Having Mars in Virgo could also manifest in some cases of having some physical issues that could be Virgo related, something like with the spleen or anything that can be associated, or spleen or pancreas, anything that can be associated with the zodiac sign Virgo. And also the thing that concerns me is she has transit Jupiter in that sixth house right now in the solar sunrise chart. And as I've talked about before, Jupiter could be very paradoxical, could be very strongly benign and benevolent, but could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. In this case, it may have enlarged and expanded health-related issues, and they're talking about expanding also limitations in health because you're talking about the zodiac sign Capricorn. Transit Pluto is in that sixth house as well. So it indicates that there could be something potentially perilous that could be affecting her health at this time. And transit Pluto also you could say, is making a very loose in conjunct to her sun in Leo as well. But there's really not much more I'm going to say about this than what I've stated already. Now, another thing that I noticed too, though, as far as her looks like her south node placement, that transit Mercury is getting ready to make a conjunction to it. And as I've talked about in previous videos, many of you may already know that when you're talking about the south node, when it's involved in transit, it can reflect what one may be going away from. Mercury can rule the news in astrology, communication, media. When transit Mercury is hitting that south node, that's an indicator that she may be going away from the news sometime, which I'm sure she's going to, because she's going to have the surgery, and I'm sure there's going to be a certain recovery period. And this is something, being the zodiac sign Cancer, she may have shown a lot of unequivocal and unconditional love for him, a lot of tenacity. And you're talking about being in the 11th house of aspirations. So, and also the 11th house is television. It can be associated with television as well. It is the house of Aquarius. Anyway, people, and I want to just offer my prayers out to her. If anybody sees this that knows her, friend or family member, let them know I offer my prayers out to her and hope that she makes a safe recovery on this. So, in good recovery. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.